Hello and welcome to another episode of Another Look. This is our news and review show here on the River 95.3 Sports Radio 1450, where we talk about news that's been going on across the Shenandoah Valley this past week. I'm Dylan Nicholls, your news director here on the River 95.3. She is
Janet Michael,
host of the
award-winning Valley Today.
Oh, I knew she was going to say award-winning. I set her up for that, and I'm so mad at myself.
Yeah.
So Janet won an award.
You really like hearing
Whatever.
it. I know you do. You are so enamored of me, but are so afraid to say it out loud that you feed me those lines to be able to say I'm award-winning, because it, in a very small way, makes you happy inside too.
Say all that except with Dr. Phil's accent. Because in a really small way,
the perfect predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
You need to start putting verbs in your sentences.
If he did it to you, he'll do it. No, if he did it with you, he'll do it to you. That was one of his that I used to love when he always said these people, well, my husband keeps cheating on me. And I met him because he was cheating on his wife when we met. And he's like, well, if he'll do it with you, he'll do it to you.
Dr. Phil just storms in with his folksy wisdom.
Love him. I love his new show.
My parents love him. I think his show is like the new Jerry Springer personally. Because it's just ridiculous. I mean, come on.
I haven't watched it in years.
It's always like some daughter that's just on Facebook, just, I won't say the word, but just strutting her stuff online. And it's, and Dr. Phil's just like, this bad, okay?
Okay, he doesn't sound like the dude from South Park.
He sounds just like the dude from South Park.
But
except his head's a little bigger.
Oh, I say he has a new show. He doesn't have a new show, but the Bull. Have you ever seen Bull?
No.
With the dude in it from NCIS that was on NCIS, but it's jury stuff. It's the science of jury picking, which is what he did before he became Dr. Phil. Yeah.
He's
the executive producer on it, so it's really, really good.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I want to be on a jury.
I swear this is not a Dr. Phil review show.
I should be a professional juror. I am the most judgy person anybody will ever meet.
Professional juror. You don't get hired to juror over and over again, do you? That's not how it works.
How awesome would that be?
That would be awful.
You could just sit there in judgment of everybody all the time.
I don't think I want to live my life like that.
Oh, I love
it.
I already do. So why shouldn't I just get paid for it?
That's true. That's true. And they'd call it, your professional name would be Shade Queen.
So what stories am I judging today?
Well,
that is what this show is about, right?
No, I said earlier, I swear this is not a Dr. Phil review show. This is a real show where we talk about the news that's been going on in the Valley. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. It was actually a pretty eventful week. And I gotta say, usually when there's a hurricane level kind of thing going on, for some reason everything slows down, even if it doesn't affect the locality. For some reason everything slows down. I don't know if that's supernatural or if that's like a mentality thing. But no, the bureaucracy chugged on, as we like to say, and we got some new
as you like to say
bureaucratic action. The one thing I'm pretty jazzed about, not jazzed as in approve of it or disapprove of it, jazzed as in, oh man, that's a development. Winchester gives Shentel a cell tower deadline. Shentel, that telecommunications company, it's probably trying to put it's been trying to put that cell tower in Jim Barnett Park and get the permitting done for so long. There have been so many hurdles. So one guy resigned over it. So that's an interesting story right there. And then Strasburg voted to approve a new residential development that's huge. We're talking over 100 households, single family houses and townhouses. And there's some debate over its design. So we'll touch on that a little bit.
I know where it's going.
I know where it's going too.
Have you been past where it's going?
Yes.
No, you haven't.
Yeah.
Do you even know where Strasburg is?
I've been there.
You have not.
Yes, I have.
We're totally okay. So one of these episodes, we're going to take the show on the road,
we're
going to record it from our car as I drive you around to Tevis, so you know where that street is, to Airport Road, to all of these, to where they're tearing down the historic buildings on Bosco or downtown. We're totally going to go and do our show from the car as I take you to all of these places.
We're going to take my car and we're going to call it Villains in the Volvo.
No.
Drinking.
We're not doing
Vente
that.
Cafe.
We're taking the station car because, why
that's true. Yeah, why would we pay for the gas? Anyways, we're so cheap. Anyways, and other than that, I want to touch on Mount Jackson, this new solar farm expansion that it approved. And I want to touch on Hurricane Michael and how it's kind of affected our area. We've had a little droplet of effect in our area specifically, but Virginia Virginia got hit hard overall though, Central and Southern Virginia. So that's something to talk about. But what do you have picked out?
We're all about the schools and social media.
I believe that you.
And I didn't even think about this, so I didn't print it, so I don't have it in front of me. But it is kind of ironic now that it's popping into my head. So my two headlines
are you thinking of the Strasburg fights?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the Strasburg signs. Strasburg versus Skyline and the signs the kids made and posted on their social media.
That was Skyline students that did that to Strasburg. But then Strasburg students were fighting on their own.
Yes.
And then those signs were about an incident that happened at Strasburg a year or two ago.
But I didn't print that story, because you put it up on the website last week after I had already pulled my stories for the day. Otherwise, I would have gone clear off on that last week.
Yeah.
So this week you're stuck with me talking about Frederick County schools responding to social media threats.
Which is really serious stuff, yeah.
Yes, and Clark County discussing a new school resource officer.
Yeah.
Because I think those two might be related, even though they're totally different counties.
It's amazing because we won't get a story about a school resource officer for weeks, and then it will come when something else about a school is happening. Like these stories come in batches, based on, what do you call it, genre, topic? I don't know, but it's funny how
cyclical.
they sort of, it's a very good word, Janet.
That's a reference to last week's show.
Yeah.
Did you see the title that I gave last week's show?
Yeah, I do.
You don't pay any attention to anything. That is an award-winning website, and yet you don't even go and look at it.
Janet, I'm like Winnie the Pooh. I just bumble around. Or Chinese Prime Minister Xi. That's a reference to an episode. Look that up. It's probably titled Winnie the Pooh or President Xi.
No, it's not. Last week's episode is called Battlefields, Machetes, and Cyclical Kerfluffles.
That was a great phrase.
Yes.
Let's bring it back. Cyclical kerfluffles.
Yes. Yeah, that was your Sesame Street version. Yeah, it's on our website. You can go listen to it right now.
I'd like to hear Wolf say that in his deadpan.
I want to hear Dr. Phil say it.
Cyclical kerfluffles.
I think we should go to break.
Yeah, I think we should too. So we got a lot to talk about, a lot of school stuff going on, a new development, a new solar development, which is a big deal for the Valley, a whole new industry, and we've got some Michael information on how it affected Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley. So we'll have all that and more.
And I don't mean to dump on Florida, but my dumb news is meanwhile in Florida.
Oh, mine's actually, I forget where mine is. But we'll learn
dumb news
when we come back from this break, so stay tuned. We'll come back with some more in a minute.
It's an award-winning lunch hour every day at noon with the News at Noon and Valley Today. Listen live on air, online, or on demand at theriver953.com. That's theriver953.com.
Hello, it's Janet again. In addition to producing podcasts for the River 953 and our clients, I also host a show every weekday on the air from 12:30 till 1 called The Valley Today. It's a community conversation where I chat with local business owners, nonprofits, government agencies, and residents about what's happening up and down the Shenandoah Valley. You can hear the show live each day on the radio, you can listen live from our website, or you can listen to the podcast of the show each afternoon on our website at theriver953.com from the Valley Today page. You can even subscribe to the podcast in the Apple Podcast app or the Google Play Music Store and have it delivered directly to your phone once it's published. So join me for a conversation this week. And if you're interested in being a guest or advertising in that podcast, send me an email to janet@theriver953.com. And now back to the podcast.
And we're back with some more Another Look. If you're just joining us, which you're not, I forgot. We're not on air anymore.
Yeah.
So you've been here the whole time. You listened to probably one little ad with Lonnie's voice in it, and that was all you had to listen to.
No, it's probably going to be mine, which reminds me I need to give you a new commercial to put in the middle of this podcast.
Oh, so now it's going to be yours. All right.
Because, I'm the award winner.
So I hope when you were listening to that, you were thinking, oh, more work for old Dylan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that you weren't hitting the fast forward 30 seconds like I do when I listen to podcasts.
Honestly, yeah. If you weren't already smart enough, guys. Cheat our system.
I'm going to disable that feature.
You can't.
I'm going to call my buddy.
Yeah. Call Tim Cook.
That's his name. Yeah. I was getting ready to say Steve Jobs. Oh my Lord. How long of a day has it been?
Poor taste, Janet.
Yeah. Well,
he's barely cold in the grave.
Yeah, that's what you say until he answers me.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs?
Hey, he could be wherever, what's his name is? That rapper dude that isn't really dead.
What was
his name?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
There's some rapper dude that isn't really dead. He's somewhere with Elvis. That's what my kid always says.
Wait, Tupac?
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
I was going to say Take 3, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So what's news with you, Dylan?
In case you were wondering, that was actually almost the name of the segment before some strong-minded patriots came in and stopped Janet Michael from her.
Yeah, I forgot about it until just this moment, but now I am going to make a note to work that into every future episode. See, I'm writing it right now.
I'll let you do that for dumb news. What's dumb news for you?
What's news with you, dumb Dylan?
That's another one right there. All right, let's talk about this Winchester Shentel Tower deadline. I think that's big news. I
just want the conversation to be done. I just want them to finish. This is like the longest cell phone conversation with your grandmother who doesn't know how to hang up the phone is what this whole thing has been like. Have you hung up yet? What button do I push? Yeah, this is never going to end.
No, I mean, honestly, it's a little bit insane. Just to give everyone a little background, I don't have the timeline in front of me. I just had the most recent story. But basically, this telecommunications company based in Edinburgh called Shentel came to Winchester and it wanted to see if it could go ahead and put a cell tower in Jim Barnett Park right next to the Leicester Peace St. House BMX track. They had looked into some other sites. They had said these other sites are not ideal. This is the right site to do it in. So can we please put it there? There was some debate back and forth, and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board for Winchester, which is the first line of defense, I think, for this whole permit application process.
Because it's located in the park.
It's located in the park, so they would need a conditional use permit to change that little bit of land. And they also need to do a lease and a franchise agreement and all that. So, long story short, they said their recommendation, because all they do is issue a recommendation and then Winchester City Council votes on it, their recommendation was, no, do not put a cell phone tower in our park. And then Winchester City Council eventually gave them permission to apply for the conditional use permit.
Yeah.
They didn't give them permission to build it or they didn't do anything
official. But they gave them permission to move to the next step.
And so in response, I believe the gentleman's name is John Bentley, and he is the Parks and Rec Advisory Board chairman. Was because he resigned in response and said something along the lines of, if our recommendation doesn't mean anything and the Winchester City Council doesn't take it, I fail to see the point of even doing this. I don't see why we're here. I don't see what purpose this board serves. And you've said before that you actually saw the point of that you agree with him on that point.
Yeah.
So now here we are where they're submitting these applications. They're going back and forth trying to figure out what's right and what's not. But now there's been some huge kerfluffle before even this story, some cyclical kerfluffle over whether or not the lease agreement that they would need for this track was actually improperly negotiated. And McInturf basically accused Eden Freeman and tip of my tongue.
Yeah, some other dude.
No, some other lady.
Was it?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, well anyways.
People.
City manager Eden Freeman, and I believe she's part of Parks and Rec.
Eden Freeman's the town manager. Or the city manager.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe the other person was involved in Parks and Rec or the head of Parks and Rec. And long story short, they had apparently been negotiating with Shentel and before they brought it to the city attorney, and McInturf said he should have been involved in the beginning. And when they brought it to the city attorney, they didn't realize that they had actually been negotiating the improper thing. I'm not well versed in the ins and outs of what they should have been negotiating, but they were negotiating a lease, and I think they should have been negotiating a franchise or something along those lines.
It's all just semantics.
And basically, the city attorney said, look, I wouldn't be surprised, or not the city attorney, one of the councilmen said, I wouldn't be surprised if Shentel negotiated with them and negotiated the improper thing, not because they were ignorant about it, but because they wanted to try to get away with this thing and not have to deal with the city attorney at all. So a lot of
that's a little skeevy.
We don't know. That was one councilman's accusation, or even just guesswork. Wasn't even an accusation. So we don't know. But now here we're sitting here. There's been all of this stuff going on with the cell tower. I mean, that right there just took me 5 minutes to plow through.
Yeah, and it's been going on for like 23 years.
Yeah, and I ignored some minor scuffles that happened, some minor kerfuffles that happened.
During council meetings.
Yeah, there's a bunch of little things.
And some yelling, some apologies.
And so now, unexpectedly, during a Tuesday night executive session during the city council's business meeting, the councilors unanimously decided to give the company just 30 days to prove that its site that it's chosen by the BMX track in Jim Barnett Park is absolutely necessary to the project and that it couldn't be built anywhere else. And it basically it's called a, what's the name of the report? A site selection information report that they have to provide. And once they provided that within 30 days, City Council will either approve it to go forward and for discussions to move forward, or they will just reject the application overall.
And then it's really over.
And then it's really over. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
It's never going to be over.
I don't know, because there's probably some little subcommittee that needs to, I mean, who knows? But it sounds like it's really over if this doesn't happen. And they put a solid deadline on it, and they put that solid deadline, basically, what does that make it, like November?
Yeah, it's been going on for a really long time.
Yeah, basically, I think it's late November is by the time they have to respond. So, wow. I mean, we'll see. But meanwhile, Winchester Country Club has actually been making some noise and is asking Shentel to consider their land in Frederick County for the project.
Which is not far. I mean, yeah.
And this decision by City Council came 2 weeks after the Winchester Country Club made some noise. So you might assume that it was a direct response to the Winchester Country Club actually saying, hey, we want you to build here, and City Council
we'll take your money.
I mean, City Council's probably as sick of this debate as we are. So they're probably just like washing their hands of the whole thing, trying to at least, and saying, you better take a close look at Winchester Country Club, and Shentel, you better make
really
damn sure. I can say it now. We're on the podcast.
Because you said a cuss word last week. And we
damn sure. Yeah, I did on accident. We had to bleep it out. But yeah, so that is going to be really interesting to watch. I'm taking up way too much time here.
Yeah, this is like the most boring of all the stories you had, and you have now just spent so much time on it.
Boring.
Build a tower, don't build a tower. I don't care. Just quit talking about it and do one or the other.
Boring, Shannon.
And I don't even use Shentel. I'm an AT&T customer. I'm looking for free service if you're listening.
You're looking for free service. Yeah, she'll throw you a Valley Today.
My phone just lit up. Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah. Look at that. Oh, man. So basically, other than that, Strasburg voted to approve a new residential development, which is a big deal because it would be 57 single-family houses and 58 townhouses, over 100 different units, which is huge. It would be on John Marshall Highway, located at 1395 and 1437 John Marshall Highway. Councilman Kim Bishop has been quoted as saying this is just crucial for business because they're constantly saying whenever somebody is kind of courting Strasburg saying we want to put our business here, they're constantly telling them we need more rooftops for us to look at this and say this is a viable location. So they really want this to go through, but there were 2 dissenting votes out of the 7 council members. 2 voted against. And the reason they voted against was because they were really concerned about congestion, which I think in this area, especially on John Marshall Highway, is a very valid concern because John Marshall Highway during school season gets clogged very, very quickly, and it's the main artery for people to get to and from 66. And that's just on our side of it, to the east. So I don't know too much about the western side of it, but there's only one entrance that residents people would actually be able to use to this development of over 100 homes. And then there would be one other, maybe a second other for emergency vehicles.
Yeah. And that's a lot of houses with one way in, one way out.
A lot.
Yeah.
So
onto an already busy road.
I think those concerns are valid. Mayor Rich Orndorff has also said he thinks those concerns are valid, but he's also said, look, it's the nature of the property. I've talked with the developer and it's just not feasible to put a second entrance.
I just wish a politician would pick a side. Oh, I agree with them, but I also see the other side. Just pick a lane.
I want you to run for office. I really do. I want the quote to be like Janet Michaels said, I like this side, but I like this side too.
Yeah.
I wanted to read that.
You know that's never going to happen with me.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, okay, this side is the way to go, and anybody goes with the other side is just stupid.
Oh, you're just going to do scorched earth.
Yeah.
Like, it'll either be a development or a hole in the ground.
Yes.
By the time you're done with it.
And you're going to know exactly which one I believe in and which one I feel passionately about. There's going to be no question.
I don't know. You seem pretty passive about the whole thing, so I'm not sure.
That's why I don't run for office, because this nonsense of having to straddle the middle is not in my nature.
Yeah. So some other preliminary news that I said I would cover. Mount Jackson approved solar farm expansion.
That's kind of cool.
I think that's very cool. Cypress Creek Renewables is one step closer to breaking ground now. I think they need to get some other permission for Virginia Apartment. I'm not quite positive on that, but they're going to do phase 1. Unfortunately, for phase 2 and 3 to go forward on their solar expansion, they're actually going to have to go backwards and redo the permitting process for those phases, despite them being adjacent to the land that they're doing this on. But that's understandable.
That's your bureaucracy.
That's the bureaucracy. But they're excited now. They can start actually spending real money with the town council's approval, and they plan to break ground next year on phase 1. So that's an exciting development. And
I think Unless that's not what it is. I think there's a solar farm in Frederick County.
I wouldn't know about that.
There's somewhere off of 522, and if somebody's listening to the podcast right now and knows where it is I'm talking about, they can comment on the podcast page. But
or
when
they
you're
can
coming
text
down,
direct and connect.
What is that, Dylan? What?
Text direct and connect is when you actually text directly to the station and somebody will eventually see your text and respond to it. Actually, no, we're good about it. We respond within a few hours.
Yeah.
So whether or not someone's on, they will see it either by like 5 a.m. in the morning or
I see them because I have the app on my phone. So
and you see it on your phone when you go home. So someone's going to respond to you. But if you know the answer, 635-4121, text that little number and let us know.
But yeah, there on 522, there's like a whole field of what look to be solar panels.
Maybe it's just a field of mirrors.
See, that's what I'm wondering. Now I gotta,
Why would it be a field of mirrors?
Cause,
what, a modern art project?
Yes, oh my gosh, it could be that.
God.
It could be something for the aliens.
All right, we better take a break before this gets even crazier. But we're talking about aliens now, so we really better take a break. But I just want to touch really quickly, Rappahannock Electric Cooperative and Dominion Energy, they've both been talking about the power outages that have happened as a result of Hurricane Michael and what parts have hit us. Not many parts of it have hit us.
Here in the Shenandoah Valley,
In the northern Shenandoah Valley, we've been pretty lucky. I did see some outage dots on REC's map up kind of close to Winchester area, which I was surprised about. And that's when I checked. I mean, this is Friday.
Let me look at their Smart Hub app right now because I am one of their members, not just a customer. I am a member. Oh, look, didn't recognize my face.
Okay. That's going to take a while. So I'll tell you what, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, Janet will let you know who's lost their power today. And you'll be listening to it way after the fact anyway. So all that relevant information when we come back with another look.
Hello, it's Janet again. In addition to producing podcasts for the River 953 and our clients, I also host a show every weekday on the air from 12:30 to 1 called The Valley Today. It's a community conversation where I chat with local business owners, nonprofits, government agencies, and residents about what's happening up and down the Shenandoah Valley. You can hear the show live each day on the radio, you can listen live from our website, or you can listen to the podcast of the show each afternoon on our website at theriver953.com from the Valley Today page. You can even subscribe to the podcast in the Apple Podcast app or the Google Play Music Store and have it delivered directly to your phone once it's published. So join me for a conversation this week. And if you're interested in being a guest or advertising in that podcast, send me an email to janet@theriver953.com. And now, back to the podcast.
It's an award-winning lunch hour every day at noon with the News at Noon and Valley Today. Listen live on air, online, or on demand at theriver953.com. That's theriver953.com.
And welcome back to Another Look, our News and Review podcast. Not an on-air show anymore for now. I don't know if you clamor and text direct and connect to 635-4121 and tell us you absolutely want it to be on air. We might put it back on air. That would be really cool.
Well, you were saying yesterday during one of our other meetings that you thought we should be on the air and that we should be live.
Okay, live was because I was delirious and didn't know what I was saying. But on the air, I actually, we got enough positive feedback that I was like, wow, I mean, maybe we should keep it on the air. But also, it's really difficult to do it on air because we have to time it. I have to back time it. It adds some extra steps for me, which I'm not adverse to doing, but I mean, that's when the day gets really long. And we end up making a longer podcast too and having to time it perfectly. So it's a little tougher.
Well, and for me, it's all about the filter that I have to put on my thoughts.
Well, that's true.
Which is exhausting.
I mean, our listeners were probably thrilled when I said damn earlier. Well, fellas, I can't do that on air.
No. And you did. Well, you said shit last week.
I did. We can
during
actually
the
say
dumb
that
news, something during dumb news, and you went, "Can you believe that shit?" And then looked at me
I said,
"What did I just do?"
I think I said a guy had an oh shit moment or something like that because he dropped his gun.
Yeah, and we could say damn on the air, and you can say hell on the air. You know, you can't do it on a regular basis.
It's kind of mostly,
but shit is off limits.
From what I understand, the FCC mostly cares about bodily functions.
Yeah,
and they don't really care about much else.
No. And you can say ass on the air, but you can't say asshole.
Yeah. Bodily.
Weirdest.
Well, because that links into a bodily function, right? Think about it. It's all linked to
that particular bodily function is what the second half has already turned into. of this podcast. Can we just talk about the 5 people who live in Stephen City who are without power right now?
Oh, but can we talk about shit and Dr. Phil some more? We have to talk about actual people suffering. All right, wait, people suffering. I mean, they lost their power. They'll be fine. But who lost their power? Because you just said
I pulled up the outage map on Rappahannock Electric Cooperatives.
Again, this is Friday, 4:42 p.m.
Yep, and as of this morning at 11 a.m. 11:01.15 a.m.
So this is your up to the minute update.
Yep. There were 5 estimated customers affected. A crew had been dispatched and the outage cause was weather related, and
there's no way they don't have their power back.
I don't know. It depends on how
what kind of crack
big of a tree fell on how long of a line. I just checked Middletown. I got power. I don't really care about the rest of those people.
I gotta say, I
gotta make sure my UVA, UVB light is shining on my turtle. That's all I'm worried about. I gotta put it on a UPS or UPC or whatever those are called.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Are you talking about USB?
No, one of those power supply things, so that if the power goes out, his little light bulb stays on, and because his shell won't get hard if he doesn't have UVA, UV. How many different crazy things are we going to talk about in this podcast?
It's called an MSNBC.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, the power source. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then you plug it into a CNN, and
no,
then
you plug
it
into
off.
a Rush Limbaugh, and then it. No, we're not getting political. Jan. So, Janet, tell me about your stories. Tell me about your woes.
So let's start with Frederick County Schools respond to social media threats.
Yeah.
First of all, how stupid are these kids?
No, they're angsty, troubled kids who are getting bullied in school, and I'm not justifying it all, by the way. It's disgusting that they think they can go online and make these threats and nothing can happen, and it's stupid too, but I understand why it happens, and I think it's sort of a symptom of the bullying issue, amongst other things.
I mean, is it a cry for help? I mean, they've got to know when they put these threats on social media that it's public.
Yeah.
And that they can trace it back to who you can't post, because apparently one of these was on Instagram. Frederick County Schools spokesman Steve Edwards, who I know actually I worked with years and years ago, was quoted as saying that school officials became aware of a James Wood social media threat on Tuesday night and a Millbrook threat on Wednesday morning. While he didn't describe the James Wood threat, he said that the Millbrook threat came in the form of an Instagram post in which the student declared, "One day this school is going to see what I can do. I'm going to make sure as many cuss word dead that come in my path to stop me." Do these kids think that they're just going to post this stuff and skate?
Well, and
or is it a cry for help?
Here's a great, because I think here's a great example, because I mean, a cry for help is sort of when you're saying this problem, I'm having this problem, I'm too shy or internal to actually come out with it and ask somebody for help. So I will basically put the responsibility for both solving the problem and asking someone for help in someone else's hands by doing something like, if you're suffering from depression, cutting yourself, but not so much that you actually die and somebody finds you. So that's kind of a cry for help. But this, I think, speaks to sort of the social media issue we have right now, which is impulsivity with social media and lashing out and reacting with social media and using it as this strange little outlet to sort of get our way without having to directly interact with anybody and kind of use it as a release on the pressure valve sort of a thing. And we do it with politics all the time. I mean, we make a political post that we don't want any jerk to comment on, but who's not on our side. And if they do, we tear them apart and then we delete them and then we delete our friendship with them. And that's the end of it. And we know when we post a political post that nothing's going to get achieved, that that people will disagree with it. The more vehement it is.
It's not going to solve a problem normally.
Yeah. I don't know that this is a cry for help. I would categorize it as sort of like somebody feeling powerless, and this was the only way that they could take back some power, and they were just not even thinking because they were a teenager and they're impulsive and that's how it works, and thought that they could get away with it. And
well, and in this case, Frederick County Sheriff Lenny Milholland, my favorite sheriff, said that the homes of both students who were accused of making the threats were searched and no guns were found. Extra deputies patrolled those two schools on Wednesday as well in an effort to calm parents and students.
Thank God no weapons were found.
Yeah.
Because I think if
But that doesn't mean there weren't any. That could mean the kid has them somewhere else.
Well, I mean.
See, there's no end to this, and that's the problem.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that means that the kid could have them somewhere else, because that he would not be able to buy a weapon himself, which means that he would have to rely on his parents for that weapon, which means that the gun would be stolen and the parents would have to report it stolen at that point. Or
but what if he was one of those kids that we talked about last week that was going around to parked cars and found an unlocked car and was one of the 4 or 6 guns that were stolen?
We were talking about
that's just it. I mean, and as a parent, I mean, and granted my kid is grown, but as a parent, social media was just coming into what it is now when Josh was of that age. We have guns in the house. My husband is an avid hunter. So we have several guns. We have handguns, we have rifles, we have shotguns, we have several guns in our house.
I hear that guy hunts bears.
He does. He actually killed one for the first time a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he's going to be devastated that we didn't say that on the air, but hey. But we have a locked gun safe. Josh never knew where the keys were. There was no need for him to know where the keys to the gun cabinet were. And from a social media perspective, I let him have a Facebook page. But I had different rules than what I think a lot of these parents set rules for their kids. I hear a lot of parents saying, I let my kid be on Twitter and be on Facebook and be on Instagram, but they have to friend me. And they don't understand social media well enough to know that's not good enough. Because you can set up a friend list on Facebook and post something that people that are your friends won't see. You can set up a friends list that just includes 6 of your friends and not your mom.
Yeah, it's true.
So my rule always with Josh was I want your login and your password. I want to be able to log in to your social media account at any given time and see what you have posted. I want to see your private messages. I don't think I did it twice. And I think the first one time that I did it was just to show him that I could. But it gives you the full perspective, not just what he could still be hiding. That was rule number 1. He could never have any of those accounts that I didn't have the login and the password for. Rule number 2 was that he could not friend anybody that he could not physically introduce me to. So don't be friending some dude that's a friend of some dude that's a friend of some dude that lives in California. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
If I can't pick you up from high school and you say, hey, Mom, that kid over there, Fred, that's the Fred that I just got the friend request from.
Yeah.
And then I can see. And then rule number 3 was he could never post anything that he couldn't say to my face or to Jesus. That was it. Now, I will say at 24, he hasn't been on Facebook in like 4 years, 6, 7 years, but still.
No wonder.
Yeah. And now his Twitter is a hot mess and he keeps changing the password and I can't even guess what it is anymore.
With all those rules you set up, his posts were probably like, Christmas is very good.
But no, I mean, it's one of those things where you hate to be the person who says, why aren't these parents watching their kids? Because I was a parent and I know that there is a fine line between being able to keep your arms around them 24 hours a day and still being aware of what they're doing. But if you're not making any of those steps and you're not having any effort to at least be on top of it.
And that's the thing is I think that's where it's important that you at least have a relationship with your kid.
Yes.
In my personal opinion, that's maybe 5 more steps that I would have taken what you did with Josh. But what you had with Josh, which was most important, was a relationship with him.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys probably had dinner together every night, and you probably talked, you probably knew how his day went, and that's the whole point, right?
Yes.
Because if you can be his outlet at that point as a parent, and he doesn't have to go to Facebook to feel powerful or to feel validated. So.
And that was part, what we did. We had dinner every night at the dinner table, not in front of the television, and all of us every night went around the table, tell me the best part of your day, tell me the worst part of your day. And all 3 of us, me, Tim, and Josh, all went through that routine, every single night. Now, there were a lot of nights where Josh would say the worst part of his day was having to sit there and have dinner and tell us what the best part of his day was. But that was a whole nother thing. But I mean, this was so he graduated from high school in 2012. So this was in 2009, 10, 11, 12. Facebook was still new. So I mean, in that respect, I didn't understand what it was that much either. So the more control I could have, the better.
I mean, me and him are around the same age group. And we have, we in our youth had a really different experience with Facebook than kids are having today.
Yes.
And it's getting worse today. And it's getting worse with adults today too. And I think it's getting worse with the adults than it is with the kids.
Yeah, I think. Well, and that's part of the problem, I think too, is it feeds into itself because the kids see what their parents are doing on social media and think, well, if Mom can do it or if Aunt Jackie can do it, then why can't, where Aunt Jackie come from? I don't even have an Aunt Jackie.
Someone's a fan of Roseanne.
So, yeah. Oh, is it coming back? I watched the first episode, threw up in my mouth, and decided I wasn't watching it anymore. No, and then all that fell apart, and she's gone. And now the Connors are coming back, so I might have to watch it again.
It's just Dan, you know?
I love Dan.
Dan's lovable.
Yes.
That guy lost a lot of weight, too.
Yes.
Did you see that? John Goodman is... He's got the beach bod, ladies.
Oh, I wouldn't go quite that far.
Line up.
He is the beach bod if you're like on Mexico City Beach right now. It's a hot mess.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
So anyway,
Too soon, Janet.
Last story, which is kind of a lead into this one. Clark County discusses new school resource officer. So explain that to me, because you wrote that story.
Yeah, basically, what it comes down to is the reason they're considering a new school resource officer is because they've been offered a grant from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. And they're considering whether or not to accept the grant because the grant would pay for something like 30-something thousand of the full 60-something thousand salary and, but not the full salary.
Yeah, it'll cover 31,000, but not the remaining 38,000 that they would have to pay for an officer's salary.
It's also not guaranteed for next year or any years coming forward. It could happen again. It could not happen again. So basically what they're saying is, look, this is great and all, but some people have expressed frustration, I think, just in Clark County, just in the fact that they said, I feel like they've done this to us a lot, where they go ahead and throw a little funding our way for appearance's sake, and then they drop us with the full expense at the end of the day, and we have this deficit in our budget.
Yeah.
So, they're considering whether or not they need a second one. They have one full-time one in their only high school, Clark County High School. That's their only one, right?
Yeah.
And so now they're considering putting a full-time one on their middle school, and it's Johnson Williams Middle School, and just trying to decide whether or not it's worth the expenditure and whether or not it's actually going to fall completely in their lap the year after this grant takes effect.
Well, and then the other thing they have to consider is there a need? Is there a need and or a justification for it? Because they're going to have to do that if it starts coming out of the taxpayer's pocket.
And, I mean, with a middle school, I don't know. I don't know the stats, but I would imagine with the middle school, the threat goes down significantly.
And I don't know. And it's one of those things where Clark County is a pretty small community. So, but does that mean I'm just thinking, okay, not in this county? Because that's what everybody thinks until
it's true.
Something happens.
No, it's true, but it is a small community, and I gotta say, they're killing it on their accreditation, on their graduation rates. It looks like they're killing it. So, I mean.
Okay, probably not the best use of words when we're talking about school resource officers.
Looks like they're doing very, very well.
Yes, they are
Christmas
excelling.
is a good holiday. I'm under the Janet Michael whip now.
But yeah, so I tweeted that particular story from the Rivers Twitter account. I always tag my friend Mary Daniels. She sits on the board of supervisors for Clark County. And so I just always tag her so that she can then share it and, with traction and how all that works.
Yeah.
She actually retweeted it with her own comment and said, what do you think? Increased safety and community policing or another step towards schools normalizing a police state mentality? She doesn't have any answers, so nobody really had anything. But my assumption, knowing Mary the way that I do, is that she is probably hearing, as a supervisor, both sides of that argument while this is being discussed.
Yeah, and that's a cultural argument, I guess.
Yeah.
And, I mean.
And here's my, we talked about this before we went on the air. I'm like, I can, oh, dear Lord, am I actually going to say I can see both sides of this?
Oh! Politician Janet's here, everybody. Clap for the politician.
Oh my God, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
But no, I can see where you want your kids to be safe at school.
Right.
And if that means there needs to be another resource officer there, then by all means, let's find the $38,000 to make up the difference, and we'll worry about next year when next year gets here. But at the same time, at what point do we want our kids to have the school experience, or is that gone? The school experience that I had is completely different than the experience you had in the early 2000s.
No, it's true. I mean, I guess the crux of that, and I guess every school is different, or I don't know how much individual school policy affects this, or how much state regulation or county regulation affects this, but the main question it seems to be is, how much does the school resource officer affect the culture of the school, and not just through the feeling the kid gets when they actually see the resource officer, because you can't really control that, but I mean, when you say police state, you think of people being stopped and frisked.
Yeah.
You think of people losing freedoms, and does it actually affect their day-to-day lives, or is he just a presence?
Well, and here's the thing that occurred to me as I was reading this over when you were talking about that boring cell tower, because I wasn't paying any attention.
I can tell.
why are we and maybe this is semantics. Why are we calling them resource officers? Because if we are putting them in the schools to serve as police officers, then why are we calling them resource officers? When that whole concept originally came up, there weren't school shootings. So they were resource officers. They were a resource for the students if they were being bullied, or if they had a question, or if they needed a ride home, if they needed somebody to stay with them because their parents were late picking them up after football practice. They were a resource. And it seems like we've gotten away from them being resources, and now they are police officers.
I think you're right in that we forget all the other things that they do.
Yeah.
And whenever the conversations now are about funding more of them, and the reasons conversations are about that is because no county wants to be the next county to have this happen to them.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is a resource officer, I think, is still not a misnomer, still a good name for it, because they do all of this other stuff day in and day out. And and
on that premise, fund them.
Because
put
honestly,
one at every school, because if nothing else, you need these kids to be growing up with a positive influence of somebody in a uniform.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
So
it's an interesting discussion, and that's she tweeted that, so you can check out the tweet if you like.
And then I'll tell her to come and listen to the podcast, and she can comment on it, and people can have a healthy discussion.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about.
But that's all I got until we get
all you got?
Yeah, that's all I got. I was keeping it short because you were whining about the hour-long show
short.
on the.
Janet, you want to see how long you took?
That's because you took forever.
How long do you think you took?
I don't know. I think it was like 12 minutes.
We're encroaching on 18 and a half minutes.
But that's probably because the first 5 minutes we talked about, I don't even know now. I can't remember. But it was all random stuff
Dr. Phil
before. Yes.
And swear words. Well, with that, we better take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have dumb news. Because we still haven't given it another name. We need to come up with a catchier name for that.
We're not.
I know. But Liz is the boss, man. And she told us to. So we should.
Liz, if you're listening, we are making every effort to find a new name for this next segment.
Toiling.
Yeah.
Toiling.
Yes.
It's been a cyclical kerfluffle for us, and we have just been struggling.
I wake up in the middle of the night screaming, crazy criminals? And all these other things, except my story today isn't really even about a criminal. It's just about a stupid person.
Oh, I got a criminal.
Yeah. Good.
So, I'm not too satisfied with that. But we'll see who wins. I think you're going to win this one, but we'll see. So for now, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to have dumb news on another look.
It's an award-winning lunch hour every day at noon with the News at Noon and Valley Today. Listen live on air, online, or on demand at theriver953.com. That's theriver953.com.
Hello, it's Janet again. In addition to producing podcasts for the River 953 and our clients, I also host a show every weekday on the air from 12:30 till 1 called The Valley Today. It's a community conversation where I chat with local business owners, nonprofits, government agencies, and residents about what's happening up and down the Shenandoah Valley. You can hear the show live each day on the radio, you can listen live from our website, or you can listen to the podcast of the show each afternoon on our website at theriver953.com from the Valley Today page. You can even subscribe to the podcast in the Apple Podcast app or the Google Play Music Store and have it delivered directly to your phone once it's published. So join me for a conversation this week. And if you're interested in being a guest or advertising in that podcast, send me an email to janet@theriver953.com. And now, back to the podcast.
And welcome back to some more Another Look. We're back on track. We're focused. Janet.
We just took a 32-minute break, I think, to rant about random stuff.
You're not supposed to tell the listeners that. You're supposed to make it seem like we just jumped right back in, and it only took the 30 seconds that the ad took, or whatever. I don't know
that's what it was. Yeah.
Just 30 seconds. So, really quick break we took there. And now we're transitioning. This is our news and review program, but now we're transitioning into dumb news, or, as I just came up on the spot with an incredibly creative title for it,
and that was dead air, people. That's not him just cussing for 10 straight seconds.
No.
And then it was gone.
No, I never came up with anything. I just thought I would in the moment. And it never happened. All right, you better go first, Janet. What's your story?
All right. Well, I'm not going to read you the headline because it kind of gives everything away.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with, meanwhile, in Florida.
Of course.
The proper use of a microwave oven is being debated in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, God.
A Florida gas station owner has placed a sign in her store asking customers not to warm their urine samples in the microwave, specifying that the oven is only for warming food.
Oh, I have so many questions. Owner
Parul Patel said she's become sick and tired of people walking into her BP gas station and on-the-fly convenience store. That irony is not lost on me. In Jacksonville to warm their containers of urine.
Is it called on the fly or is it called out of the fly?
Hey, at this point, they're just random people walking in and it's happening every day, Patel told Jacksonville's WJXX-TV. Yeah, the double X is not lost on me either. Warming urine from someone who has taken drugs is seen by some as a way to help pass a drug test. Patel store is within walking distance of 2 labs, though one says it doesn't collect samples for drug tests. The people walk in off the street, microwave their urine containers, and leave, she said.
Who would have the gumption to like walk into a store, find a microwave there? I mean, first of all, second of all, like, I don't know of any gas stations here, at least, that actually have just like a microwave that's open to anybody to use. Do you? Is that
7-Eleven does.
Does it actually?
Yeah, because you have to heat up stuff. Yeah.
Oh, see, I only drink my coffee in the Starbucks. Yeah. I wouldn't know.
So, okay, it gets better. She started cussing at me, Patel told the station. She said, well, where is the sign that says you can't use this for this kind of purpose?
Oh, righteous indignation. That's an angle.
That gave me the idea. If that's what you're asking me, then I'll put the sign saying this is for food use only and not for use with your urine or anything else.
Because nothing says buy our food like a sign that says urine.
In May, a Denver woman was suspected of heating a urine sample at a 7-Eleven microwave and cited for allegedly causing damage to the machine. A store clerk heard a loud bang, authorities said.
Oh, it exploded. You know how sometimes like a microwave smells like popcorn if you microwave too much popcorn in it too often? I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, and that story is what you call a pisser.
Oh, well done. We're back on the podcast. We're off air and we're dirty. We're piss dirty at this point. Oh man, do you think
the headline was don't microwave urine samples, Florida convenience store owner warns customers.
I thought it would be something like Florida convenience store owner tells customers you're in trouble.
Yes. There you go.
You like that?
Yeah.
So I can be a poet too.
Thank you, Sally Michaels, for that story.
Oh, Sally. Pulling out all this stuff. She's fantastic. Oh, man.
Oh, and by the way, the best part at the bottom, the Associated Press contributed to this report.
Of course. No, I gotta tell you actually, cause I get that AP ticker every day and the AP covers more dumb news for cheap entertainment factor. I mean, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at what stories they'll actually include in there that I have to editorialize.
Well, they gotta get a giggle every once in a while too.
I guess. Yeah, there's probably some depressed AP drone in there typing on his computer going,
Nobody's looking at my social media anymore. I gotta make this stuff national now.
I bet I can get dozens of radio stations to say this. Presses the button. Well, I've got a bit of a different story. That takes place in a store. It's in a Aurora e-cigarette store, and it took place Sunday. Which Sunday? Who knows? Probably months ago, maybe a year ago.
Could have been this past Sunday.
I didn't print the date at the top of the story, so
Wow.
I made a mistake there.
Wow.
But it happened. Or it didn't. It's not a reputable site.
Does it say at the bottom the Associated Press contributed to the story? Because if it doesn't, then it really isn't.
Actually, for printing purposes, I just copied and pasted the text in the Word doc. So
fake news.
I have absolutely no information. No, I hear this is how the pundits do it.
Oh, okay. Then keep going. I can't wait to hear what's next.
This reprehensible criminal. Basically, this robber wearing a mask comes to this e-cigarette store, but he does not enter. He does not walk inside because he's a smart, groovy cat. He knows how the game's played. So what he does is he paces once in front of the store and casually looks around the store to see what's going on inside. How many employees? What's the situation? What's the gig here? What's the play? Then he does it again. and again, and again.
Like?
He paces back and forth like 3 times in front of the storefront.
Well, maybe he's losing count every time he walks by. Wait, did I count 3 or did I count 4? Let me walk by one more time. Yeah. Oh wait, was that 4 or was it 5? Was there somebody hiding behind that counter?
If that's the case, then he would have had to be drunk out of his mind because there was only one person in the store. And he walks in and he pulls out of his pants what appears to be a long-barreled handgun. And the employee goes, "Oh no!" And he's got a mask on, so she can't see his face. But he pulls it out, but for some reason he decides to grab it by like the bottom of the gun, like not where the grip is.
By the barrel.
No, by like the bottom, but not where the grip is, kind of a grab. So he grabs the grip, but like the bottom of the grip. And he only grabs it with 2 fingers, like a crab. And he picks it up and immediately he stumbles with it and drops it, except his stumble actually sends it flying and it goes behind the counter. So then he and the clerk both look at it and then he props himself up with both hands to try and get at it onto the counter. And Mia is just like, "Oh, no. And she picks it up. It turns out it's a BB gun. But beyond that, like he knew it was a BB gun.
Did she shoot him with it?
No, he knew it was a BB gun because he brought it, right? But he still ran for his damn life. And on the way out the door, literally in the door, his pants fall down to his knees.
Oh, she should have peppered his ass. Like, pop, 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 pop. But that she totally should have peppered him with it.
Like in a cowboy movie where they're just putting their hand on the hammer, just hitting it over and over again. I can totally see. She should have.
Oh yeah, I'd have John Wayne'd his ass right on out the front door.
Oh yeah.
And then walked over and stepped on the pants. So when he got up to run away,
from me,
they were laying there.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, don't do John Wayne.
Don't do John Wayne? Yeah. Why not? Huh? I think the funniest thing about the whole story is that she said there was probably only like $100 in the cash register. So she was just like, it was the dumbest thing I've ever been a part of. And she said they had the security footage online and it's great. It's a great little story.
Well, I hope that if she scared the piss out of him, he ran to the nearest 7-Eleven and heated it up before he went for his drug test shortly thereafter.
Which he probably is on probation, so he probably had to do exactly that.
Oh yeah, cause that was the other one I didn't use, was about the guy that put the YouTube video up about how to remove your ankle bracelet using a butter knife and a screwdriver without disconnecting the circuits. Yeah. And it got 38,000 views on YouTube, including the local police department, who then arrested him for felony breaking a piece of equipment, something or another.
That's 38 Paul Manaforts just jumping through bushes and running for their lives across the countryside. Like, "Oh brother, where art thou?" Yeah. Can you picture it?
Are we done here?
And that's all the time we have for another look. When we come back next week, oh wait, we don't plan these, so we don't know what we're going to cover.
We're going to have more news, local news stories, more dumb news stories, and more completely random, irrelevant, cyclical, kerfuffle conversations.
So many cyclical kerfluffles.
Yeah. And if we're not back on the air next week, probably a few cuss words.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enough cuss words to make Dr. Phil's little bald head spin. Yeah, that's right. We're going to do it, folks. Right here on your favorite podcast in the world, in the Shenandoah Valley, certainly on the